If you are in a situation where you might need to help your parents sell their home or help an elderly relative move out of a home that they have lived in for decades, there's a lot more going on here than simply putting the home on the market. I have seen families lose money, rush decisions, and create a lot of unnecessary stress. Not because they did anything wrong, but because no one really explains how this process actually works in real life. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through what actually happens in these situations and what you need to think about before making any big decisions. The biggest mistake I see is people treating this like a normal home sale, but it's not, because typically what's happening behind the scenes is a parent is moving in with a relative or into an assisted living facility. They are downsizing after 20, 30, 40 years in the same home. Sometimes a health issue is forcing a quicker timeline. Or in some situations, a loved one has actually passed on and now the family members or siblings are trying to figure out what to do with the home. And that last situation in particular can be really challenging because you're not just dealing with logistics. You're dealing with emotional attachment, years, sometimes decades worth of belongings, multiple family members with differing opinions, and a timeline that is not fully in your control. So before you even think about pricing or listing, you have to understand this. This is a life transition first and a real estate transaction second. Almost every family in this situation ends up having to make three major decisions. Number one, sell as is or prepare the home. A lot of these homes haven't been updated in years, so the question becomes, do we sell the property as it sits, or do we spend the time, energy, and money on improving the home first? What most people don't realize is you usually don't need a full renovation. Sometimes it's just a clean out, painting, minor updates, strategic staging, and that alone can significantly change the outcome. Number two is how to time the sale. And this one is tricky because sometimes you need the proceeds from the sale or you're trying to coordinate a move. But unfortunately, the market and life don't always line up perfectly. So what I recommend having is a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, because timing rarely works out how you expect it to. Number three is who is making the decisions. Now, this is where it can get complicated because occasionally there's just one person making the decisions and that simplifies things a bit, but oftentimes there are multiple siblings or people involved in the decision-making process, and sometimes the parent or the person moving out of the home also wants to be involved in the decision making. And this becomes even more important when a loved one has passed and now there are multiple family members or siblings involved in the decision. Everyone might have a slightly different perspective. Some may want to move quickly, some might want to hold on to the home, and others still might want to maximize the value. And none of those perspectives are wrong, but if they are not aligned early on, it can slow things down or create a lot of friction during the process. In those situations especially, the goal is not simply to sell the home. It's to get everyone to a decision that they're actually comfortable with. So here are the biggest mistakes I see people making in this situation, especially here in the greater Boston area. Mistake number one is doing too much work. People assume that they have to do full renovations or spend $50, $75, $100,000 or more, and they don't always see that money back. So the goal here is not a full renovation or perfection. It is strategic preparation. Mistake number two is waiting too long. And sometimes families delay decisions here. Obviously, there is a lot to talk about in a situation like this. So I hate to see people rushing through it, but I also hate to see people waiting too long to make any decisions. Because at the end of the day, especially if you're dealing with a vacant property with no one living there, keeping their eyes on it, a lot can happen in a short period of time, especially depending on the time of year here in Greater Boston or the New England area. This just became an issue for a friend of my grandmother's who was recently moved into an assisted living facility. Her family is deciding what to do with the house. They're slowly cleaning it out, not in a hurry at all. And what happened was a pipe burst in the basement. And now instead of having a basement full of stuff to move out, now they have a basement full of soaking wet and probably irreversibly damaged stuff to move out. Discuss what to do, make sure everyone's on the same page, but keep in mind that properties aren't going to stay these, static immobile objects without things impacting them. So, a slow leak can do the same thing. If no one's living there, noticing a slow leak, inevitably it can lead to a huge issue for the people that are trying to decide what to do with this property. So keep that in the back of your mind. Mistake number 3 is thinking there is a one-size-fits-all strategy for everyone. Every property is different. Every situation is different. What works for you might not work for a different property. So just keep in mind that, in some situations, fully preparing a home to launch on the MLS might be the best option. For some properties, some pre-launch marketing might be the best fit. And in some cases, creating some off-market opportunities and keeping the property listed privately might be the best situation for those homeowners. Just keep in mind that no single approach is going to work across the board for everyone. So what does actually work in these situations? Well, this is where having the right strategy and the right team around you makes all the difference, because it's not just about listing the home. It's about coordinating everything that needs to happen leading up to that point. And for most families, that includes things like cleaning out the home, figuring out what to keep, donate, or sell, and getting the property into a condition where it will show really well. This is where a lot of people feel overwhelmed, because they feel like they need to figure all of this stuff out on their own, when in reality, they should be looking for someone that can guide them through the entire process. Whether that means connecting you with clean out or storage companies, estate sale or donation resources, or even specialists who can help evaluate items like antiques, artwork, or furniture. Not because you necessarily need all of those services, but because having access to the right resources makes this process a lot smoother. And it also helps you avoid mistakes like accidentally getting rid of something that actually has value. Now, here's what a lot of people don't realize. You don't have to wait until you have fully prepared the property to start putting it in front of potential buyers out there. So some of what our sellers have elected to do in the past, and we give them full reign, they are in full control, they can decide whether or not to accept any offers. But while they are preparing the property for sale, so cleaning it out, getting it painted, they are still allowing us to market the property privately to a select group of buyers and real estate agents. So if the right buyer comes along that is going to be able to give them the price that they want, so market price or more in some situations, and work within their timeline, so they're able to close on the property on our seller's timeline, they have accepted offers prior to even listing these properties on the market. So that enables them to finish preparing the home and actually already be at the closing table by the time they finish clearing the property out. That way, instead of taking a couple months to clean the home and then starting the listing process, then they're already ready to close with a price point that they are happy with. And of course, we give them full control over the whole process. And we have every intention of rolling the property out on the MLS if they don't get an offer that they're happy with. So plenty of our sellers have decided to do that, and we see it all the time with agents that we work alongside. So just keep in mind that that's an option. You do not have to wait until you are fully ready to list to start marketing the property. Now, I want to be very clear here. Just because I have seen that process work exceptionally well in certain situations, it does not mean it's going to be the right fit for everyone, especially if you're in a situation where you're having to coordinate and have multiple family members or siblings agree with how to market the property. At the end of the day, you want to make sure you're working with someone that's just going to be able to guide you through all of your options and let you make the decision that's going to be best for you and your family, and not force you to make a decision you're not comfortable with. Because in most cases, if you are able to prepare the property relatively quickly, do some pre-launch marketing, and get it listed on the multiple listing service, that is going to be the best way to create competition and get top dollar for that home. But the reality is, preparing a home relatively quickly is not always possible. And if the home is going to take some time to prepare, most of our sellers just haven't seen a downside in at least exploring some off-market opportunities. At the end of the day, they know they're not obligated to accept any offers that they don't absolutely love and are absolutely comfortable with. And most of the time, they prefer to save some time, energy, and effort and close a couple months sooner. And most of them are absolutely fine not knowing that they squeezed every last penny out of the market. If you are starting to think about this situation, whether it is right now or at some point in the next year, This is one of those scenarios where getting the right guidance early on can definitely make the process a lot smoother. So if you have questions about preparing the home or the best options for you, feel free to reach out to our team. We're happy to help, happy to have that conversation. In the meantime, I hope this gave you a little bit more insight into how to approach selling a family home. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.